Today's lesson is about resources. Now, what does that have to do with the previous chapter? It links in, as I said earlier on, that every chapter that I did links in with everything that I am about to say or will say next. Today I'm going to associate resources with the power of networking. One major misconception that people have is that we need money, when actually money is a means to an end. Now, what is the end? The end is resources. We normally want money because we want to exchange money for resources. Money is just a means of exchange. If you can get to resources directly without going via money, hey, you have what you want. But if money is necessary for you to get those resources, then hey, you can go the money route. But the wonderful thing about money is that it becomes a common denominator for all the resources. In other words, if you sell sneakers and I sell bread, and you don't want my sneakers but I want your bread, we can always have a common denominator that allows us to swap anything for everything, which is money. But however, we must keep in mind that really money is not what we chase for, but we chase for resources. For example, when you say we want money, you want money because you want a car. Now you have to understand that the car you want was once an idea that became a reality, it became a resource. So when you say you want money for a house, you actually don't want money, you're looking for the house. If you want money for food, you're not really looking for money, you're looking for food. These resources that we chase after were created, their origins are from God. Now, these are the resources that we've been called to dominate. We've been called to dominate resources. We've been called to manage resources. We've been born to manage resources. However, as human beings, we found or we created the common denominator for resources, which is money. Now, we have to understand that even a human being, you and I, were made out of resources. A human being is 80% water. So that's a resource that you are made out of. Anything in life that has to be made will need resources. Resources are a vital aspect of the survival of anything. Resources are very vital. Now, please note that I spoke about imagination, knowledge, and God long before I spoke about resources. Okay? Because it's pointless to have resources and not have the knowledge or the imagination. Because it's the imagination and knowledge that creates resources. However, the point that I wanted to get at was this. Resources are a vital element for anything to survive. We have to understand that. And in order for you to live, or rather to thrive here on earth, you have to master the art of managing resources. Now, what does that have to do with the diagrams that we had the other day? Let's look at it. Suppose this right here, I'll have to draw it somewhere here. Suppose this would be you. Okay, I'll draw it here. Suppose this was you. And these were other organizations around you. Some big, some in the middle, some small, some just other people, others larger than life. You know, suppose this was the situation, some right in the middle. Now, if this was you, you would understand from the other day that we said your thoughts and ideas can be omnipresent or multi-present. So they can exist in more than places at once. Your thoughts and ideas are not limited by space, and they're not limited by geography, or they are not limited by the environment. So what happens is that you then, using your thoughts, can extend yourself to all these organizations, companies, businesses, people. Networks, etc., etc. You discuss earlier. Now, as soon as you have done that, you will find that your thoughts, or rather your influence, or rather you, the inside of you that we discussed the other day, and not just merely your physical body, the inside of you will now exist in a bigger zone, which is this area right here. Now you will find that even though your body is one tiny dot over here, your being has stretched over this entire environment. Now these are the aspects, or rather the qualities of a human being that we normally take for granted. The fact that we are not just our bodies, but we are our minds. Okay, now how does that come into place? Or rather, how do resources come into place here? Now, all of these entities around here, they represent some form of resource one way or the other. Now, this resource could maybe be a financial institution. This organization could be maybe a supply distributor. This could be an advertising company. They are all resources that I'm indicating by the letter R. This one could be a web hosting program. This one could be, let's say, YouTube. This one could be a web search program. There could be anything. Now your responsibility is to use your mind to be able to communicate, manipulate, and organize these resources according to your perspective. In other words, according to your agenda. They have their own agendas, but in your existence, how do you make their agendas fulfill your agendas? Okay. Now, if the center of your network, which is your mind, if the center of your network and the elements around the center of your network, in other words, if you are properly aligned and properly prepared, if you here in the middle, if your system here in the middle is properly perfected, if your strategy right here in the middle is properly implemented, if everything is okay here, the aspect of controlling everything else here won't be difficult, won't be a difficult task. So if the knowledge that you have right here is alright, if the idea that you have is alright, note, I said if the knowledge is alright, then you will know how to move all these resources around here. Now, suppose this is a company that you will pay for certain services. As soon as they render those services, you have actually used 10,000 employees. No matter how small those employees are, no matter how small, those services are, you would have used those 10,000 employees, because it takes 10,000 employees to render those services, to run the whole machine. If you have another company that does something complementary with another 10,000 employees that does a certain service for you, you now have 20,000 employees. But note, your power and influence is not double. In other words, it will not double, but rather will be exponential. Every time you link yourself to any entity and asset that has resources and draw whatever you want from them, you increase your power, irrespective of your size. So basically we can say that although you are here, this is actually the new you. So please understand that the more resources you create, the more resources you own, the more resources you multiply, the more resources you control, the wealthier you are and the more powerful you are. Till we see you next time, cheerio!